Good evening. Thank you all for coming to the Guthrie Chamber Open Forum. We appreciate you being here. I love seeing a packed house. That's exciting. It's also exciting to me that these candidates have been coming regularly to our chamber events. That shows that our community counts, that our community votes, that we make a difference. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate that. I wanted to thank Chris Evans of the Guthrie News page for moderating, also streaming live, and to Karen Ediger from the Guthrie News Leader for streaming live as well, and to, Aaron back in the back, who's doing us on Channel 20. So we are going to start tonight with Senate Seat 20. We're going to have our candidates up. Each has 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes per question. If you have a question you want to submit, there's cards over here. You can submit them as well. We have some that we were given online as well. Then they will have 2 minutes to do a closing statement. We have flipped a coin as to who will start first, and then we will move on to House District 31 after that. So let's get started. Come on up, guys.
All right. Again, thank you all in the audience for being here this evening. And we'd like to introduce to you Aiya Kelley and Chuck Hall. Thank you for both being here tonight. Both of you running for Senate District number 20, and we are 8 short days away from the primary Tuesdays. So best of luck in your campaign. As Tracy mentioned, we flipped a coin. Aiya won the coin toss, and we'll get the first one. And Aiya, will you first please introduce yourself and what compelled you to seek office and your vision for the office?
So just my opening remarks?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello there, I'm Aiya Kelley. I'm running for State Senate for District 20. I did have my speech ready, but as I was reminiscing this evening, I got to, how many of you remember when Brahms used to be over on Division? Yeah, it seems like a million years ago, but I had one of my first jobs there when I was 16 years old in high school. I worked there 9 months and maybe made milkshakes and ice cream cones for some of you, and then I got my driver's license and got my car stuck for the first time in Mineral Wells Park, where my grandfather actually lived when he was superintendent of lakes and parks. My great-grandparents lived at 74 and 33 on a farm where my mother spent many happy days growing up. And then, when I was a single mom, I remember standing in the grocery store here with my daughter. She's here tonight, and looking into her big brown eyes and saying, no, we can't buy fruit roll-ups today. I'm sorry. And then I got my education, and I got my first big job, and same grocery store, and I said, pick out whatever snacks you want for lunch. And when I was 25, I was diagnosed with crippling arthritis, and I needed medicine for that cost $3,600 a month. Couldn't afford that, so I lived 10 years in debilitating pain. And I used to walk the streets of my neighborhood right by Lake Guthrie with my daughter to try to maintain my mobility, and was able to get that medicine later and essentially got my life back. I helped my parents at God's Food Bank, where they worked for 14 years, and saw some of our seniors come in that couldn't afford food. They were buying medicine instead of food, and we packed backpacks for our children who otherwise wouldn't have food over the weekend when they weren't at school, and talked my husband into dressing up as Santa and handing out hats and gloves to the kids who were cold through the winter because they couldn't purchase such items. Now we live right by the Lazy E, and if you look on some of my paperwork, it says, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I've been where some of you have been, and I think some of you have been where I've been, and while, yes, I want to fight for you, I want to walk shoulder to shoulder with you and fight the battles that you and our community face. I appreciate you being here tonight, and I look forward to serving our district.
Thank you, Aiya. Chuck?
Yes, so good evening. Chris, Tracy, thank you so much for hosting this event and for the Guthrie Chamber of Commerce. I recognize that that this is an interview, and you need to understand that I don't think I've sat for an interview for over 30 years. So I am a little bit out of my element, but I'm more than willing and looking forward to addressing some of the issues that are in front of us this evening. The other night, I had the pleasure of being at a public forum in Perry, and somebody had the idea that maybe my mother would be a good one to introduce me, and so they prepared her some remarks real quick, and so she stood up to introduce me and began reading these remarks and became a little bit uncomfortable. and we all kind of felt for her a little bit. It didn't go as probably as smooth as she would have liked. And when it was over, towards the end, she really kind of got better. And I said, well, what'd you do different? And she said, well, honey, I just kind of got away from what I had written down. I just kind of started speaking from the heart, and it kind of made me feel a little bit more comfortable. And so that's what I'm going to attempt to do today. I'm going to try to speak from the heart and let you know what I'm about. I'm a fourth generation Oklahoman, and I am a third generation community banker. I've been serving as chairman and CEO for the Exchange Bank and Trust Company for a number of years. We have locations in Perry and Stillwater. I am the father of three beautiful daughters. I have my oldest daughter is a child advocate for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I have my middle daughter who's with us this evening, Sydney. She is a junior at the University of Oklahoma, and she too is going into child advocacy. And then I have my youngest daughter, Riley, who's here this evening, who is going to hopefully go cheer for Oklahoma State University. She's a senior, will be a senior in high school, and we're awfully proud of her. I've been married for 24 years to my wife, Amy, who's with us this evening. She's the redhead in the group, wearing the Chuck Hall shirt. She is a public school teacher. She's taught in Tulsa Public Schools and Oklahoma City Public Schools, and now in Perry Public Schools. And so we're awfully proud of her. I've spent my whole professional career, not only in the banking business, but serving my community. I was blessed to spend some time serving as city treasurer for the city of Perry, as also as city councilman, and I served 2 terms as mayor of the city of Perry. So does that red light mean we're getting close? It does. Okay, so all right. So I've been serving my community for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to taking a step up and now serving my community and District 20, all the communities in the district at the state capitol. And thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you. And it will beep at you at 12 seconds, so then the beep kind of lets you know to wrap it up. All right. Thank you, Chuck. You bet. All right. Our first question, our next one here is for Chuck first. We are all aware of the dire situation of the current state budget. Specifically, what revenue streams do you support for correcting the problems, and what is any specific programs would you cut?
Yeah, so we are aware, of the situation, and really what I hate is the fact that we've taken so long to really take the time to address, the education and teacher pay issues in the state of Oklahoma. Look, in my mind, I think what we need more than anything is we just need a plan. We don't have a plan in this state. We have not taken the time to bring educators and legislators and administration and whoever the next governor is going to be to sit down and really work out a plan for education. It's about creating a vision. We take a lot of time at the bank creating a strategic plan. And that strategic plan really makes us take a look at where we're at and where we want to be and how we get there. And so we spend a lot of time creating this document and working on a strategic plan. And I think that that's what we need, for education. Look, the funding is going to come from a whole lot, from a whole lot of sources, but I don't think it needs to be new taxes. I think that we certainly need to take a look at these agencies. I think that there are efficiencies in operations that we can certainly find. We need to look for reforms where we can find them, and that's in all areas, including education. And I think that there are certain reforms that we can find and do a better job with, but we can certainly do it without putting more tax burden on our citizens. A diversified economy is what will help, more than anything. We are so reliant on oil for our future, in education. I just think that, and it comes with. Thank you for that. That's the one.
That gives you, 8 seconds. Okay.
8 seconds. Well, a diversified economy is really going to help us to be able to better. This buzzing is just driving me up the wall. I also want you to know that I think the state of Oklahoma is starting down the right steps. I think that they're starting to see that as we start to come into an economic expansion in our state, that we're going to have some excess that we need to point towards education and education funding. So I'm looking forward to being part of that plan. I'm experienced at it. We spend a lot of time in our strategic planning, our strategic offering. It becomes a working document for us, frankly. We look at it on a regular basis, and I think the state of Oklahoma should too. But the only way that we're going to be successful is to start bringing people together. We have got to bring those that are involved in education and in our legislature, along with our governor, and create a plan that's best for the state of Oklahoma and our teachers.
Thank you, Chuck. Aiya.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all aware of the dire situation of the current state budget. Specifically, what revenue streams do you support for correcting the problems, and any specific programs would you cut?
Okay, thank you. So yes, along with speaking about the budgets, being a single parent, we know that we create a budget and then we find the way to stay within that budget. And our leaders cannot expect us to do better than they do. Now, we look at the misappropriated funds, the mismanaged funds, and the misspent funds that are taking place at 23rd and Lincoln right now. And it is time to go in there and audit, figure out where those monies are going. And then if we want to find out how they're getting there, then we look at forensic audits. So the first thing is to find the monies that we already have that aren't being spent in the way that they were allocated for. And then this month, or last month, May 2018, if you look at the gross receipts that we got in, we are at a $1 billion, right at a $1 billion excess. We are in an economical upswing, and I really believe that everything we need to pay for in our budget right now is there. And as a future lawmaker, it will be our job to come through and find those funds, find the means, and never, never refer to raising taxes as a first solution. So we need to do that. And then as far as the education, we want to talk about funding that. I believe the funds have been there. And I believe with this $1 billion in excess that we have, over all the years that we have tracked those receipts, this is the most that we have ever had. You can find that on our state government website. You can find all of that information there. So I really believe that unifying, not fighting between Republicans and Democrats, Democrats and Democrats, Republicans and Republicans. Oklahomans have a common goal. All of us have a common goal. We come at it from different views and different perspectives because we're different people and we travel different paths. But I really believe that we can join hands and unify and do what it takes to get this state back to where it needs to be.
Thank you. Next question for Aiya. In the same manner a business or of a family would have to do, is there any way that candidates could do a department by department and line by line current budget for the state?
That was a very interesting question. So just as each of us here tonight have to learn to budget and to spend our money wisely, we have hired those in office to do that with our money. And I really don't think that they have been completely well-versed in this area. Once again, as a single mom of 17 years and a business owner, and as a director who works for a nonprofit organization, it has been my job to create budgets and find the monies for the expenses that we had and to use that money responsibly. And I really believe with the technology that we have now right at our fingertips, that each citizen should be able to sit down at their computer and to pull up the budgets of each department. We should be able at any given moment to pull that up, to see where the money's going. And one of the questions that was in there was to ask specifically what could be eliminated, the expenditures that could be eliminated or reduced. We could see that right away, which ones could be eliminated, reduced, and see where those monies could be best used in the current budget shortfall. You know, this is what our state government requires of us, and I believe that all of our leaders should lead by that example.
Thank you. Chuck.
Sure, thank you. In my mind, and there's my mother, she just came. I can't believe it. Nice to see you. We were just talking about you. There she is. We needed to be talking about line item budgeting, really, and that's something in this state that we did for many, many years prior to the recession that came about. What happened back in the recession is that we just oil revenues began to crater. We were on the fringes of the greatest tax cuts that we've had, which which were wonderful, but we didn't have the resources and the revenues coming in, and so they got away from line item budgeting. They went into panic mode up at the Capitol. What they ended up doing was just making the cuts in the agencies, and they left it up to the agencies to figure out how they were going to make ends meet. We need to get back to line item budgeting, and that's something that we can certainly do. We do that in our businesses today. Each and every one of you that have small businesses, we do it in the banking business. We sit down, every year, and we sit down and we do a line item budget. We do it department by department. We start with our management team. We go into middle management. We go down into our frontline staff, and we create a budget that is line itemed, so we know where the revenues are coming from. We know where the expenses are, and we hold our people accountable to it. It again is another document that you work on. I don't know how you can do it, without some sort of document that can track your success and failures. And so we absolutely need to get back to that. I think also another thing that would help is if we got back to assigning meaningful duties to the appropriation subcommittees. These appropriation subcommittees just kind of meet, and I think they just do it just to kind of say that they did. I think these subcommittees really need to be getting down deep into the weeds and talking to these agencies about where the real opportunities are for savings, for reforms in their area. And then we just simply need to hold them accountable to it.
All right. Thank you. All right, next question. We'll start with Chuck. Where do you stand on making Oklahoma agriculture better, since agriculture is one of the major revenue generators for our state as well as employees? What will you do to back it and strengthen it?
Sure. Well, of course, as a community banker and somebody that spent, years, helping the family farmer, what we need to do is we just need to get government out of their way. That's just simply what needs to happen. We need to protect property rights, of the farmer. We have commodity prices that just fluctuate like crazy, in Oklahoma, and it makes it difficult, for the Oklahoma farmer to do, what they need to do. So, in my opinion, the best thing that we can do is just get government out of their way, and allow them to be the stewards of the land that they always have been. I want to make sure that that we don't cut any benefits that are effective to the Oklahoma farmer. Oklahoma farmers don't have retirement funds. What they have is what they build and what they grow, on their farms. They've invested, and sometimes generationally, in the family farm. And when it's time for them to move into some sort of healthcare need that they may have, or retire, or to turn that over to the next generation, we just need to be there for them and make sure that that their quality of life is upheld. I don't know how we could be the Oklahomans that we are today without the fundamental understanding and belief that we and greatness that we get from the Oklahoma farmer. They provide for us. They put food on our table. They make us meaningful in the world economies, and I think we should do everything we can to support them.
Thank you. Aiya.
Yes. One of my first approaches to make all of our businesses successful is to keep taxes lower here in our state. There are companies in New York that are looking for places to go with lower taxes, just like some of our businesses used to go to New York. And so the fact that Oklahoma taxes and business taxes remain lower is something that we really need to fight for. Another thing is that we need to reduce regulations, and we are slowly working at that. But I have a neighbor right near me. As I mentioned, I live right by the Lazy E, and he raises goats, and we visited extensively with him in his home, and he is not allowed to do the things that he needs to do on his little goat farm, and has to take these goats to another place or hire someone to come get these goats and take them to another place to maintain his farm because of the regulations. And so I feel that reducing the regulations, giving our farmers, our own farmers, our people, the incentives that they need to be successful in our state. I have asked several different people to serve on my advisory committee while I'm in my campaign and then on into office, and one of them is a person who is in agriculture in Kingfisher, and he was talking to me about these same things, that the fuel prices for the farmers and different things like that, that we need to keep the rates lower for them. We need to think about them. We need to always consider them when we are making laws and voting laws down at 23rd and Lincoln. And another thing that we need to do is remember educating. So many things that our children aren't learning these days in school, and one of the things that we need to always keep are the assets of our state, and one of those is farming and agriculture, that they are learning the tools, having the tools and learning the trade to be successful here in our state, also in farming and agriculture.
All right, thank you. Kind of move over to education now. We got a lot of questions on that that was brought in, as well as some questions up here. But first off, tell us about your own personal experience with public education. Aiya first.
Okay, so my own experience with education is that I was born and raised in Okinawa, Japan. My parents were missionaries, and I had an option to attend private schooling or to go to Japanese school. And so my parents sent me to the private school so that I could learn English. When we came back to the States, I had been in accelerated Christian education, so they continued me in the same curriculum that I had been studying in all along. So once I graduated from high school, I received scholarships to attend the University of Central Oklahoma, which is a form of our public education, and I obtained 2 degrees there, and also put my daughter through University of Central Oklahoma. She's now at OCU Law. I taught at a school on Hefner that is for children with learning disabilities. I taught there for a year. I've taught here at 2 of our private schools, and I've taught at Langston University for 11 years. Did you want just public education experience, and that's all?
That's whatever you like to do, yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was so. In addition to public education, there was another question. You stated you've taught K through 12. Where did you teach these grades, and what did you teach, and how long?
I taught for a year at Trinity School on Hefner. I taught music, and this again was a school for disabled children. I taught at Edmond Christian Academy in order to help to pay tuition, and I also taught at Grace Covenant Academy here in Guthrie. I taught all different subjects. I taught English, I taught Japanese as a second language, I taught music, I taught voice, theater. I also taught piano. I had my own private studio, which is outside of the public school sector. I also taught in the after-school program at St. Mary's in Edmond, and I think that's the answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. And Chuck, I'll rephrase the original question. Tell us about your own personal experience with public education.
Sure. Well, let's see what I've taught. I've taught girls golf at Perry Public School, and I did not have the success that Guthrie's golf team had winning the state championship. So that's my experience with teaching in public schools. But we have great experience with public schools in Perry. My entire my father and grandfather and were all public school educated, along with my mother. I was publicly school educated. My girls were all public school educated, and my wife teaches in public schools. We are just such a fan of public schools. As I look around and drive the district, and I look at Cleveland, and I look at Pawnee and Morrison and Hennessy and Crescent and Guthrie and all the communities in between. These schools are the lifeblood of every community. Without them, they just wouldn't have much. And so I'm a big fan of public education. I think that we need to do everything that we can to make it better. What we need to do in the state of Oklahoma is we need to spend less and we need to invest more. An investment in public education is the way that we can create and have more prosperity in this state, more job opportunities. I don't have to worry about my girls looking for work someplace else. They're going to be properly educated in the state. They're going to be prepared for some form of continuing education, and I'll support whether it be college or career tech or whatever there is, but I just want them to be educated to the best of their ability. You know, the greatest percentage of our kids in the state of Oklahoma are publicly educated, and you know, it's a constitutional mandate that we have to provide education for them, and I want to do it in the best way possible.
All right, thank you. We set that question up to set up the next question.
Sure you did.
And we will go with Chuck first on this one. How would you handle the current teacher pay crisis? Was the teacher walkout a success? And please share your thoughts on the group Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, who argue against the bill that would increase teachers' salary by an average of $6,100 with the tax increase that was passed earlier this year.
Yeah, so we'll start with the last first. I mean, look, I took a real look at the Taxpayers Unite, and I tell you what, I mean, they're rooted in some really good Republican principles. You know, I like a lot of their program and a lot of what they're doing. But I think this question is probably really related to where are you on the potential repeal of this, and I don't mind telling folks, when the legislature was debating this and talking about it, there was a whole lot of different plans that were proposed. We had the Taxpayers Unite, we had the Step Up Oklahoma. There was a lot of discussions that were going on about how to fund education, in this state. Again, I go back to, I just hate the fact that we waited so long to take a look at this. Education and education funding has been a real issue in this state for a long period of time. And so it came down to, we had to take action. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't part of the discussions, but I'm not in favor of the repeal. I think that we need to be looking forward rather than behind us. It's nice to see that we've kind of brought the teacher pay up to some sort of pleasant average, but we can't stop there. What really needs to happen is we have to fund these classrooms better. We have to do a better job of funding these classrooms, and we have to prioritize our expenses. I just feel like that it's time to move forward. We don't need to fall back again. We need to create a funding source that doesn't raise taxes in this state and provides these kids with the quality education that they need and deserve in the state of Oklahoma.
Good timing.
But
That's good timing.
wow, I'm starting to get a feel for this. I'm in a rhythm. I'm feeling it.
Thank you, Chuck. Aiya.
Yes, when I first announced my campaign was when just about right when the teacher walkout happened and OTU actually came to light, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. And I actually went down to the Capitol that day and spoke with many of the lawmakers and asked them questions. I listened to the press conference and I talked to the different people who were presenting in order to make an educated decision. Now, as a teacher, it is imperative that we provide not only a free education, but that we provide a good education. And so when we look at this, we can't just look at funding, we have to look at giving a quality education to all of our students. Not chosen ones, not chosen areas, but all of our students. And so I have been approached with that petition 4 times now, and it has been my choice not to sign that because the decisions that the lawmakers have made behind us is now what we look forward to and find out how to fund this. Now, the funding that was provided with the tax raise only provides that funding for 12 months. Now, the first thing I will do is I will read a document before I sign it. And so when you are looking at this kind of a crisis, it's not something that you approach with a 12-month answer. I am a constitutionalist. The Constitution demands free education, and I will support that with all of my might. So then we talked OTU, constitutionalists. I think I answered all of that. The walkout was actually caused because the legislature didn't listen. And sometimes extreme solutions take extreme measures. I think we've got the people to talking. I think we're going to go in a good place. I think we have the funds to pay for what we need to. And as lawmakers, that's going to be our job.
Thank you. And that kind of leads into our next question. We'll let Aiya go first on this one. What is your plan to find funding to allocate public education, including per pupil funding and teacher salaries? What specific revenue streams or changes would you promote or support if elected? Well,
I really believe that the funding is already there. I would like to be a part of getting a handle on the misappropriated funds that we already talked about, the misspent monies, the monies that are going to places where they are not allocated. I am trying to join a group of people who last year were ordered to pay $10 million back to the lottery fund that they spent in places that they shouldn't have. This should not be happening. And so that's one of the first places we've got to find the money that's missing. I already mentioned the gross tax receipts that are showing an excess of $1 billion. I really don't think that we need to go find the funds. I think the funds are already there. And as a teacher and as a lifelong advocate of excellent education, I will always support not only the funding for education, but I will work hard to ensure that each student is provided the best opportunity for a great education.
Thank you. Chuck?
Well, we just simply can't get lulled into a false sense of security. We're all Oklahomans. Many of us have been here our entire lives. We've seen the ups and downs of the economy. We've seen what oil and gas does. Sometimes we're living great, and sometimes we're living large, and sometimes we're living low. I started my banking career right around the time of the Pink Square Bank failure. That was back when everybody was thinking that the oil and the money is going to keep coming, and it's never going to go away. Well, we're actually coming into a pretty good period, she's exactly right. I mean, I've talked with the state treasurer and got the numbers. We're talking numbers to the tune of $1 billion that are greater than the revenues that we had from even a year ago. I don't want to see us get lulled into a false sense of security. It's going to be easy for new incoming legislators to say, you know what, we talked about needing to fix all these problems on the campaign trail, and now we got all this money, we're flush with it, and we don't need to address it right now. Bankers have something that's called a loan loss reserve. And what we do with that loan loss reserve is we prepare for the downtimes. We prepare for the period when the loans might not be paying. And so we create this reserve so it's there to protect the bank and to protect the stockholders in the downtimes. Well, when do you think that we add the most to the loan loss reserve? We do it in the good times. When the bank is doing as well as it possibly can, that's when we create and build up the loan loss reserve to prepare for the bad times in the good times. I think the state of Oklahoma with the Revenue Stabilization Fund has really done a good thing. And if you don't know what that's about, that's where it's brand new this year, and it hasn't been funded yet, but it will be. When oil prices are up and there's excess money, then it goes into the Revenue Stabilization Fund for when the downtimes come. It's the loan loss reserve for the state of Oklahoma. That will help us to fund public education.
All right, thank you. Next question, one more on education. We'll begin with Chuck here. What is your stance on school vouchers and charter schools?
Well, I think that parents should have a choice, and I'm glad that they do. I think every parent should take a look at the very quality education opportunities for their kids and make a decision that best fits them. But I got to tell you, and as I said from the outset, I'm in favor and a fan of choice. I just want you to choose the school. I want you to choose the school around the corner. That's what I want. I want you to choose the local school. I want it to be funded to the extent that we are proud of it. The reason that I think that we're looking at all these other options without a constitutional mandate, meaning that the public education is that a lot of parents are just not liking the product that's being produced. And I think that what happens is that we need to get serious about funding public education. We need to get serious about funding these teachers so that they're not out looking for other jobs and other opportunities and looking for teaching opportunities, in other states. I can't imagine going 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in the banking business and not looking at cost of living increases or pay raises for my people. What I would do is I would lose them. They would go someplace else. I've invested so much time and so much effort in training them, and the fact that I wouldn't stay competitive, in the market just doesn't make sense to me. We need to be competitive. We need to fund the classroom, and we need to make public education the choice of the many and not just the few.
Thank you. Aiya?
If we would do what we needed to do with public schools, we wouldn't need any other kinds of schools. Our schools need the funding that they deserve. Those are our gems. Those students sitting behind those desks are our future. What we put into them is what we're going to get out of them. I am a constitutionalist and I support parental rights. There is no one who knows the learning style of their child more than the parent does. And so while I think that our public schools need to be funded and they need to be in tip-top shape, I still have to support the rights of parents to educate their children in the way that they see fit. Personally, I don't support vouchers, since that was part of your question. I think there would be some other ways to approach that, but there's multiple reasons why I don't think that vouchers are the right way to go. So once again, I go back to our constitutional requirement of funding our schools, of paying our teachers, of giving students the education that they need to graduate from high school and to score high on those tests so that they can get scholarships, so they can go to college, so they can go to VOTEC, so they can learn a skill, so they can become valuable citizens, and we keep them right here in the state of Oklahoma as our businesses and commerce continue to grow and even our rural areas become more successful.
Thank you. Next question will be, and we'll start with Aiya. On June 26, voters will vote on state question 788, better known as medical marijuana. Many believe this measure will pass and will help adults and children with their medical needs. But others believe the ballot measure is not only for medical marijuana, but recreational marijuana. What is your position on this important matter?
As far as 788 goes, I've read it, and honestly, I feel that it is a bill for recreational marijuana. I have visited with an attorney who represents 788. I have visited with several lawmakers, including our own police chief. I've even visited a grow farm in Michigan and talked to friends in Colorado, Oregon, and in Michigan about what their state is going through these growing pains. Now, I do believe that there is medicinal help in marijuana for those who need it. It helps with PTSD. It helps with cancer. It helps with the kind of pain that I endure sometimes on a daily basis. But I believe that if we want a medicinal marijuana bill, that this bill is going to have to be rewritten in order to put in specific illnesses, specific dosages. They need to be prescribed by medical doctors. Where we stand now, a veterinarian can prescribe marijuana for you and for me. A 14-year-old does not have to answer to a law enforcement agent on whether they have it or how much they have. Our law enforcement would have to be completely revamped. Our drug dogs that are at about $8,000 a piece will be completely useless. Our officers can't ask people if they have drugs, and if they do have marijuana, do they have the right weight? Do they have the right amount? Are we going to stand there and weigh? The police officers that I visited with are very concerned about this bill. So I think that we need to specify between recreational and medicinal and make sure that we're looking at the right kind of bill here. Also, employers, they won't be allowed to drug test. There's a lot of issues with this. So if we're talking about a medicinal marijuana bill, I feel that 788 is not the bill for us.
Thank you.
Thank
Chuck.
you.
Well, we ought to have applause all over the room. I think I have been in a couple different forums, and we completely agree on this issue. I can tell you that I absolutely believe that there is great value and I believe what I read in pure medical marijuana. I think a lot of lives can be affected for the better. I think there's a lot of Oklahomans that can experience a better quality of life as a result of it, and I would like to see it happen. Honestly, I really do. But I think it needs to have some better protections. This is a question that's written pretty broad. There are a couple of issues that I think about as an employer, particularly in the banking business. The way this question is written, while they're not allowed, while users or those that are held in a medical license are obviously not allowed to use the product during business hours, they can use it before business hours. They can use it during their lunch break, and then you can use it immediately after business hours. And so I just got this vision. I just have this vision of some of my tellers, who were issued a medical marijuana license, that are going to medicate before they come to work, and the next thing you know, when they think they're passing out $5 bills, they're passing out $100 bills, and it concerns me that there's no protections for that. We have drug testing policies, with our organization, but the simple fact is that with the medical license, we won't be allowed to use them. The only way that we'll be able to handle those situations of that potential abuse is to show a history of that employee's failure to be able to complete do their job functionally. And so imagine the $100 bills that could be passed out in the form of $5 bills over me trying to do the legal side of it and keep it and interview them over 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So I have concerns from that area.
Thank you.
You bet.
And we'll begin with Chuck on this one. What does criminal justice reform mean to you? We've been hearing a lot about gun control. It's one of the many terms that gets thrown out as propaganda, but nobody talks about what it really means to them subjectively as an elected official. What does criminal justice reform look for you under your watch?
Well, criminal justice reform, is important. I mean, we have reform needs all over the state, this state of Oklahoma. I mean, we have budget issues, we have education issues, health, we have social services issues, public safety, transportation. But criminal justice reform is an important issue that needs to be addressed. I mean, the fact that you can turn on late night television and hear people making jokes about Oklahoma being the #1 in incarceration is just really, for those of us that that have been our whole lives in Oklahoma, it's hurtful. It's sad. We need to change that. We need to see criminal justice reform. We do talk a lot about guns and gun issue. Look, I'm a big advocate in the Second Amendment. My belief is I would think that at some point we're going to get some questions related to that, but I'll just jump right to it. I mean, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I do believe that we have the right to bear arms. And I support it wholehearteedly, 100%. My family are hunters and fishermen, and I've taken the concealed license exam. I've gone through the rigors of that, and I have a license to carry. But back on the question, we need the reforms. I think that we need to take a look at mental health. I think that there are rehabilitation options out there that can reduce the number of incarcerations and the people that were incarcerated. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to save us dollars that we can reappropriate and put in a place that are more effective, for the state of Oklahoma, particularly education.
Thank you. Aiya.
Yes. So our prisons are overcrowded. We have one of the highest incarceration rates, not only in our country, but in the world. And it has been said that third grade reading skills are in direct relation to how many prisons that we need to build. So once again, referring to education, there's so much that happens even in our elementary years that we need to be teaching our children. Mental health, we have lost some of our funding for some of our core services, and this is one area. I was visiting with someone out at Job Corps, and they said that we have not had a counselor there for several years. Of all the places that we would need to have a counselor, that Job Corps is without a counselor right now. So you can see that we have lost our funding for some of our very most core services. This was also involved in our education funding. It was all a big package deal. But we do have to provide for rehabilitation from addictions and paths to recovery, roads to clearing records for nonviolent offenses, so that we can keep our citizens working and responsible. I have a cousin here that went through ARC, the Salvation Army program. He's back there. 5 years in October, recovered from meth and alcohol abuse. He's bought his first house. He paid for his first car. He's had a job for over 3 years that he's never missed a day. And that's because he was provided these services that have now kept him out of prison and jail, where he had been since the age of 19 until 41. So you can see that it is in direct relation to provide these rehabilitation. We need to take some of the monies that we're using to talk about building new prisons and building onto prisons and making prisons better. Prison and jail doesn't need to be a nice place to be. We need to look at rehabilitation, mental health help and issues, and funding those core services.
Thank you. Next question, I don't think we'll need the full 2 minutes from both of you on this one because I think we all know the answer, but it's on the question form, so I'm going to ask it. Where do you stand on the Second Amendment? Will you defend it? And have you ever fired a firearm? And when was the last time you fired a gun?
Oh, ask me. Ask me.
We'll let Aiya go first.
Those were a lot of questions there. I am a constitutionalist. I am a Second Amendment advocate. It is our inalienable right to protect us from tyrants. I'm glad you can protect your property and yourself and you can hunt, but it was given to us to protect us from tyrants. And I will fight for the rights of our Second Amendment. Now, the last time I fired a gun, if you are on my Senate Facebook page, which is Kelley for Senate, you will see the last time I fired a gun because I put a video on there and you can see for yourself if I'm good at it.
Thank you. Chuck.
Well, I've already answered it. I've already answered that. I'm absolutely a supporter of Second Amendment. So, my family and I spend a lot of quality time on the family farm, hunting. We take hunting trips together. My youngest daughter and I just got back, from a trip not too long ago in Montana on a successful hunting trip there, and made memories together. So if the question is, when's the last time I fired gun? I mean, 2 weeks ago. Yeah. We are learned users of our weapons. We're studied. I have taken each one of my daughters, and by the way, my oldest daughter had just showed up tonight too. All three of them have their own guns. We've been out on the farm. We practice safety. We have a lot of experience using them, and we use them functionally, and we are safe when we do it. So it's something that we do together as a family that we totally enjoy, and we spend a lot of time doing it together.
All right, thank you. And we have some questions from our audience. We're not going to be able to get to all of them tonight because we don't want to keep our candidates here all night long. But the first one, what is the most expensive contract you have ever negotiated, and what was it for? And I believe that's Chuck's first.
Well, I have experience in several different areas related to contracts and what we've negotiated. I can tell you that I have a hot one going right now. We're building our second location second bank location in Stillwater, Oklahoma. That's a multi-million-dollar facility that we let bids on, and we were working with the construction management group. So, I negotiated the contract with the construction management group for the purchase of the property, for the build out of the facility. And so I spent a lot of time, in real estate acquisition and contract work there. I've also spent a lot of time with the Oklahoma Municipal Power Authority. I'm on their board of directors currently. This is a group that provides retail power to municipalities across the state of Oklahoma that own their own municipal electric system. Several communities in our district, our Senate District 20, are members of the OMPA, and I've helped to negotiate with contracts related to purchase power agreements for our municipalities within the 42 member cities that the Oklahoma Municipal Power Authority has. So I've spent a lot of time in negotiating contracts and agreements, multi-million-dollar agreements, all the way down to the smallest. When I think about the smallest ones, that's quite simply the loans that we make in our own office. Those are contracts, people, and we hope that we've reached an understanding with the borrower and the lender together that they'll do what they say they're going to do. So all the way from the smallest agreements to the largest agreements, I've been a part of it.
All right, thank you. Aiya.
Yes, as I was considering this question, I was reminded of the biblical story of the widow's mite. And I think sometimes a transaction and the size of it is in reference to what's going on behind that transaction. So once again, as a single mom, creating my own budget and finding where to spend things, and sometimes it was what bill to pay and what bill not to pay, then I had that responsibility. But most recently, probably about 6 years ago, I was one of the main people who wrote the transaction for a $6 million sale of Muskegon River Youth Home in Michigan. This was a sale that took probably a year to a year and a half, and there were several attorneys involved. And although I majored in music, my passion is also in linguistics. And so I really enjoyed working on this document, but I would say that the $6 million sale of Muskegon River Youth Home was probably the largest transaction I've worked with, or it is the largest transaction.
Thank you. Next question, we'll begin with Aiya. Before starting this campaign, what nonprofits did you volunteer for and what did you do?
Well, throughout high school, I volunteered for different charity events at, actually it was in college. I volunteered for several charity events that went on there, but with my parents being involved with Red Cross for several years, they had many fundraising events that were in conjunction with United Way. And I often helped with their fundraising events. I performed the music for those, and generally whatever my mom and dad asked me to do is what I did. And then my mom volunteered at God's Food Bank before she became the operations manager. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you donated canned goods that I helped unload from pickups and sort and place into bags to feed thousands of people each and every week. So I was deeply involved with God's Food Bank, and also I helped with all of their fundraising events. As a musician, that's just what happens. Also, I had a friend here in Guthrie who for many years stood down at Walmart and asked many of you for hats and gloves for our children who didn't have those during the cold season. She was a dear friend of mine, and she passed away several years ago, and I took that over for her. And I collect hats and gloves in the winter for our children who need them. And George, my husband, dresses up as Santa, and I dress up as Mrs. Santa, and we give those hats and gloves out to the children of our community. And those are just a few of the things that I've been involved in.
Thank you. Chuck.
Yeah, well, as a community banker in any small town, and you can think of your bankers all over, including here in Guthrie, you're going to find bankers involved in the community. You really don't have a choice. You're kind of expected to do so. I've been involved, in our community in nonprofit volunteering for some of the greatest organizations that we have around. Main Street is something that really comes to mind. The Chamber of Commerce, a wonderful organization. The fact that these groups are really working for business development, they're working for downtown revitalization. We've been very active, in that over the years. I was 10 years chairman of the Perry Memorial Hospital Trust Authority. We spent a lot of time working on ways to provide, reasonable health care, for our citizens. Probably the biggest nonprofit that I ever worked for was the City of Perry, which is, and really there were times that it truly felt like a volunteer position. You have a lot of responsibility and a lot of duty, and the good ones, really don't spend a whole lot of time taking the credit. They're just out there doing the job that they need to do to make their community better. And so, community service. Being involved in the community is something that I've spent numerous hours doing. I think of our Relay for Life team, our organization there that raising money for cancer research. We have just spent an enormous amount of time volunteering, putting that effort together, to raise money to help others. So that's something that I've done my entire life and plan to continue to, regardless of the outcome of this election. We have to want to give back. That's what makes Oklahoma who we are.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Chuck. What pledges and/or petitions have you signed?
Can I make a quick answer to it?
Sure.
I've signed no petitions. I've signed no pledges. I haven't signed any pledges or petitions. Mom's in the room.
Thank you. Aiya.
Yes, the pledge that I have signed is the pledge that is with Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, and it aligns parallel to the Republican platform: low taxation, criminal justice reform, and the likes.
Thank you. Next question for Aiya. How have you funded your campaign? Who else has put money toward getting you in office?
Well, let's see. We started out with putting our own money into our campaign fund, and then I could not begin to name all of the names of friends and family who have generously donated to us. Oak Pack has donated $2,000 to my account, and I understand that Oklahoma Federation for Children has donated 2 mailers. That's it.
Thank you. Chuck.
Well, yeah, you start out by putting your own money in it. I mean, if you can't invest in yourself, you can't ask these people to invest in you, that's for sure. We then circled around to friends and family, and I was blessed with having a lot of support in that area. We've held several meet and greets, around the district to meet the people and to get our message out. And we've got a lot of real individual supporters as a result of it. I have been endorsed and received some money from the state chamber. I've also related, I'm sure, to your agriculture question. The Oklahoma Farm Bureau Association has endorsed my candidacy. I was not aware until I jumped on Facebook and saw the IE, or the dark money, the independent expenditure, and I think you were talking about that yourself, related to some expenditure that somebody is making on my behalf that I know nothing about. And in fact, I don't like those things. The fact that, and really what this comes from, in case you weren't able to read or understand where these independent expenditures come from, this came from a Supreme Court ruling where corporations, said that they have the right to the freedom of speech. And the Supreme Court ruled that they do, and so these corporations can decide if they want to do some sort of independent expenditure, to spend some money either to hurt a candidate's campaign or to help a candidate's campaign. I have no collusion with them. I have nothing going. I have no contact with them. I don't know who it is. None of that money ever made my campaign account. I've never seen any of it. I don't know what product they're going to put out. I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if it's against me. But I do know that they're required under this ruling to at least put my name to it. But I have no tie or understanding of who did that or anything, as it's supposed to be. Those are both federal laws and state laws. I can't know anything about it, and I don't know anything about it.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our Q&A portion of this, and we're going to end the night here with your final thoughts here for your campaign as voters go to the polls next Tuesday, 8 days from here. And we'll begin with Chuck.
Yeah, sure. Well, absolutely. And Mom, you weren't here when we were talking about this at the beginning, and the conversation you and I had about how much easier it is for you to have talks like this when you speak from the heart. And so, I've learned from my mother my entire life, and I continue to learn from my mother, even as recently as last Thursday. We started this by me saying that this is a job interview. I recognize that. I know that the people of Guthrie that are here tonight, the people that are watching on Facebook, and those that are watching on your public information network, are trying to decide, about this guy. And I understand it probably better than most. I can remember, when Perry has never had a state senator, other than the first one was Henry S. Johnston, who was the first president pro tem of the Oklahoma State Senate, and he was senator from Perry in 1907 when Oklahoma became a state. And so we haven't had one since. So I can only imagine what you're feeling right now, because we feel this whenever we get a new elected official that we haven't really fully got acquainted with. And it really becomes incumbent on that candidate, to be somebody that's going to be in the public eye, that's going to that's going to project themselves and truly, have you know that we're going to represent your interests, that we're going to listen to you, that we're going to be in the area, that we're going to be in the district and in the community. I can remember when our last two senators, were elected, thinking, doggone it. I mean, we don't have somebody from here locally. In this last case, we had somebody, from the Guthrie area. Well, let me tell you, if they are a true public servant, if they're there for the right reasons, they're going to spend time, in the district. They're going to understand the people, to understand the needs, and they're going to be there to support you. And I'm going to be that person. I ask for your vote on June 26th, and it's been a pleasure to sit in front of you this evening.
And Aiya, thank you.
Thank you. Once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. It's really been a privilege. Through the years, the topics of importance will change because of our ever-growing and ever-evolving communities. Now, as a teacher, I am ready to tackle the education crisis, both with the quality of education and with the funding. And as the owner of my own business, my studio, and as the director of my department at a nonprofit organization, I'm ready to take on the task of growing small businesses and bringing commerce to Oklahoma. Being raised by the most fabulous and giving parents someone could ever have, I have been taught to treat people who have needs with compassion. And as your senator, I'm gonna work with people from all walks of life. Not only am I comfortable with this, I look forward to serving our state in this capacity. As a naturalized citizen, I can grasp the greatness of our country, knowing that all are welcome here through the proper avenues. Now, my track record shows that I'm an extremely hard worker, and I am ready to throw my energy into keeping Oklahoma the great state that it has always been. I'm fortunate to have the full support of my family, which includes my parents, my husband, our children, and our many friends. I've approached my campaign with an openness to my constituents. I welcome you to call me. I welcome you to email me, schedule a visit with me. There are people here that I have met and visited with for several hours with your questions and comments and your concerns. My door is open. And President Reagan once said that peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means. I firmly believe that all of us have common goals in mind. I believe that our perspectives and our views come from different areas because we've walked different roads, but I know that we can join hands and unify to make Oklahoma the greatest state in the nation. Thank you, and I will see you at the polls.
Thank you, Aiya and Chuck. We appreciate your time coming tonight.